So we maintain a product strategy, and then that influences our architecture over time. Here we show the Wardley Map, and you may notice from last year, there hasn't been a huge change in that. Even if AI is improving, we haven't seen it really start to commoditize yet. So that hasn't had a big influence on the architecture. So let's move down into the different architecture views. Conceptually, we think of Ardoc as a platform that has a number of architecture techniques on top, from traditional asset management into strategy to execution, etc. All of those driving outcomes for the company. So if we start looking at particular views, starting with the logical view, Ardoc at the bottom at its foundation has a runtime graph engine. On top of that engine, where we have a number of different running services. So we have a service for generating the different visualizations. We have a service for having events and chaining those events into workflows for people. We're able to we're able to branch the graph with our scenario service to allow users to create future states and then merge those back into the main line. We have an AI set of services. We have one that isn't shown here, which is our process modeling service. On top of those services, we have the different presentation items. So we have the traditional EA sort of architecture interface into Ardoc. In addition, we have our presentations module where architects can create curated views of the architecture that they can share with people. We have our reports and dashboards. We have our surveys for being able to go in and update, especially non-architects, to go in and update information through a non-architecture interface. We have our Discover tool, which is for non-architecture stakeholders who are able to navigate self-service through the architecture and make updates. On top of that, we have our solutions, which are deployable down onto the platform. We have a number of different solutions, over 20 that we provide ourselves. And it's possible for our partners, even customers themselves, to create their own configurations, which are downloadable to the platform. As well as, of course, on the left-hand side, any number of integrations for getting information in and out of Ardoc. From a context perspective, we see Ardoc, our vision for Ardoc architecturally is to be at the hub of an organization. We want Ardoc to be a decision-making tool to help a company execute in a better way that makes use of enterprise architecture techniques as well as techniques from other disciplines, so that different aspects of an organization, from its strategy to its operational value streams, to its change or PMO function, and also the GRC function, are all doing their job of making use of information from Ardoc. And then as they do their work, that information feeds back into Ardoc, which triggers workflows, which sends information out to other parts of the organization. And then increasingly, we have AI services, which are autonomous, goal-directed, which are analyzing that work and really augmenting how that digital twin of the organization functions. So if we take that concept and now go into the different aspects of the logical architecture of Ardoc. Ardoc is a software as a service application. It executes as a single page app. That single page app has a number of sub-services, as we mentioned before. So customers see a single application running on the web. They're able to interact with that. All those services are making use of interaction with the graph, which is running in its own runtime module, as well as a set of data which we persist in a traditional relational store, so Postgres, that we're using under the covers. Those downloadable configurations we've split into these four major areas for architecture. But if we look at those, a solution module consists of both a metamodel configuration, which downloads onto the graph and explains what each of the nodes and edges in the graph represent, the attributes that they have, as well as configurations for dashboards and reports, and different viewpoints, and even configurations of integrations that we can provide out of the box. So that way we're able to provide configurations to customers. Customers can take those configurations, and we believe they solve about 80% of the problems for 20% of the effort, but then customers can actually change those configurations. So the setup of Ardoc, the Metamodel, and all the subsequent configurations is just data which customers can change themselves, or we can help them, or partners can help them also. Let's get into that technical architecture now. So mention we're running as a single page application running in the cloud. So Ardoq runs on a set of services just in Kubernetes, which we deploy into different cloud providers, as well as into private cloud environments if customers would prefer that. So we run in all the major regions. So AWS is our primary cloud deployment option. So we run in Europe and American, as well as Australian, Oceania, and Middle East data centers. And same with Azure. So that way, as we'll talk about in the deployment architecture, we can handle scalability and failover. Digging into that deeper, what's running on each of those individual servers, and especially from a multi-tenancy perspective, each customer gets its own tenant, both in the relational database in Postgres, as well as its own runtime graph engine that's running in its own container. Each of the services for the core Ardoc experience and all of the running clients that we have, they run in their own Kubernetes containers as well. And each of those is provided per customer. So each customer has its own tenant. Some customers even have multiple for when they want to fully split their access into their data. And then we're able to scale up, both do horizontal scaling and vertical scaling, depending on the size of the organization and the amount of data they need. So that way we can do performance tuning per customer. Once again, taking to an additional level of detail, we see that Ardoc is a continuous deployment environment. So we see using Argo CD there, we are able to continuously deploy. We deploy multiple times per day. So all customers have access or have the potential for access to all features that Ardoc develops as soon as they're ready. Now we're able to control access through feature flags. So especially when we're providing new functionality, we're able to create beta test organizations. And that way we can make, even if it is technically available to all organizations, it may not be feasible or accessible to all while we're doing in a beta testing phase. Sometimes we want to virtually package features into a release, especially if it's a very large change, and we want to control especially the education and the product marketing of this set of features to customers. So the features may all be continuously deployed, but the availability of those or the access to those can be controlled both by Ardoc and increasingly by customers themselves. So it could be in very large organizations, they want to do their own internal rollout where they configure their own feature flags so that only certain users can test new features before they make those features available to all parts of their organization themselves. Finally, we'll look at the AI architecture components. So Ardoc makes use of Azure OpenAI. So it deals with all the privacy requirements that we have with our customers. Customers can control their own feature flags. They can choose which parts of AI to use themselves. We have increasingly small internal running AI modules for some of the smaller features that we have. So we have an AI selector, which lets us choose whether we're going out to very large models or making use of smaller models, or maybe alternative models where customer data privacy issues are not the same. We have a full RAG infrastructure setup. So we have our own embeddings database that we use for some of our features, as well as using embeddings and other technologies from Azure OpenAI. And then that RAG pipeline makes use of data stores that we have both internally in our relational database, as well as those that we're making use of externally through Azure again. So that was the walkthrough of all the different architecture aspects that we have. Thanks for listening.